Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Michael Rudnin, AVQ, welcome aboard YouTube and Facebook. Of course, we have on Twitch and Periscope. So, folks, welcome aboard. Thank you so kindly for being here with us today. We have a hell of a show. We have a whole lot to pack in this time. So I'm going to go ahead and get busy right away. I am going to get busy right away. So what are we going to talk about today? The title of the show today is Pharma Whistleblower Tells Story. New York Times Columnist Freak Out. But that rant that she gave, Michelle Goldberg, great rant. School reopenings and the Shealey Report. Bruce Boyce, a big pharma whistleblower, spill the beans. Trump admin to open schools with coercion. In other words, it's not that we're ready, but we will coerce you to do what is necessary. Michelle Goldberg, she went ahead on Chris show, Hayes' show, and she really said something a lot of us, the exasperation that a lot of us are feeling. She let it out. She let it all out. And you know what? It just felt good seeing a darn good writer going out saying the things that she had to say. And of course, we have Tamara Shealey, who is running for senator, for the Georgia senator. She's going to say a few words about the politics that it's national repercussions here in the entire country. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with Tamara. But before, Bruce Boyce paid the price for being a big pharma whistleblower. But in the long run, he did the right thing and came out ahead. He tells his whistleblower story in his new book, Cold Comfort. It is clear that even as he survived the onslaught from big pharma, the path was very difficult. The man was flipping burgers at one time. New York, from making six figures, millions over several years, to flipping burgers. New York Times' Michelle Goldberg had a deserved freak out on Chris Hayes recently. She points out the ineptitude of Donald Trump. Trump is using coercion to force states to completely open schools. Tamara Shealey then discusses Georgia politics. So let's go ahead, folks, and start it off here. Let's go ahead and get Tamara in the mix, and then we'll go ahead and continue with the program. But we're full. We're packed. Here we go. We are here with the one and only Tamara Shealey, who is going to give us her bi-weekly update from the state of Georgia. Okay, Tamara, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am wonderful, Egberto. How are you?
I am fine. I know that you have a very busy time. Folks, I had to coax her on to doing video today because she's like, I can only do the audio today. I'm like, look, Senator, come on, Senator, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm busy though, which is good. I'm not complaining about being busy. The campaign trail has picked up to full speed, so I am busy.
Well, you know, I saw you going around town, going around other cities, and I also saw you had put some videos out there with pretty personal encounters that were heartfelt. If it's not too much to ask, just in a little short snippet, tell me kind of what really got you to that place of real concern, because there are things that you discerned when you went to that place. Talk to me.
Yeah, so I went to, I think we just have to be mindful of where we are in this season with the Black Lives Matter movement, watching the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Rashard Brooks, George Floyd. these is weighing on the Black community, and it's really taking its toll. And Black people may not tell you all the time that they're okay, but we're really not okay. We're not okay with watching these lynchings at the hands of the police. We're not okay. It reminds us, it triggers us. In some spaces and places, it keeps us in our place. So I went to visit the Rashard Brooks site. That was the gentleman that was killed at the Wendy's here in Atlanta. And I actually visited the site earlier in the day, but ended up coming back that way in the evening on my route back home, and ran into a roadblock, and it was the police tape, it was crowds. And I got out and walked over towards the crowd, into the crowd, and there was a body. There was a man that had been shot, not at the hands of the police. I don't believe that was that story, but he was killed at this gas station. But the way they allowed this man's body, the police left this man's body just sprawled out, wounded, this dead man, let him lay there the entire time I was there. It was so disturbing. It was so disturbing. And it was, this other part of that was the community, which that is a norm for them. Like, I'm asking the question, like, why are they letting this man just lay here? Why don't they cover his body? Why don't they at least put something around it? Why don't they shield? And they said, well, that's the way they do the investigation. And they're not going to cover his body until they do an investigation. And Egberto, seeing a dead man's body, a Black body, it triggered me. It triggered me in a way that I am not desensitized. This bothers me. And a lot of Black people, we're bothered tremendously by what is happening in America right now. The issues that we're having with race, we have to have these hard conversations, and it has to be addressed.
Now, Tamara, I want to interject a little bit of politics done right in here with the statement, because I saw how you felt when you saw that. And I, at the same time, get some interesting comments when I talk about these issues from a lot of our listeners. And most of these are not bad people. They're just simply insensitive in the way they ask a question, not understanding the dynamics. And let me explain what I mean. You had the killing of Rashard Brooks, and you just mentioned a killing, just a random killing maybe of somebody who wasn't killed by the police. That last weekend, we had a terrible time in many cities where a lot of Black people were killed by Black people in these different towns. And a lot of the messaging I got on the surface, they don't think they're saying anything incorrect when they say, well, you were worried about the cops killing Rashard Brooks. That was one person. What about the 26 people that were killed in Chicago, not at the hands of police? And I try to make the statement that there are problems in the Black community or in the Appalachian communities that are socioeconomically related. But the people that we depend on to serve us, to prevent or to help assist in those issues, are in fact the police and the nature, not only the police, but the social structures that we have. We cannot equate the two of them. Do you want to add to that? Because I think people just don't get it. They think because there is this high crime rate in certain areas within the Black community that somehow it is deserved that, well, why do you get so mad at cops, but you don't get as mad on the thug that does something wrong? And by the way, we do get mad at the thug, but the thug is not the authority. The police is the authority. Go ahead, Tamara.
But it is poverty in our Black communities, in our urban areas. People are poor, people are broken. People need resources, people need help. And there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger. And I'm not trying to justify any death or any killings. I'm not. I'm just hopeful that America can see beyond the things that are happening and look inside and say, why are these people, why are they shooting and killing? Why are they fighting? Why are they angry? Because these communities are being starved to death. Just there needs to be resources. And I talk about reparations and the repair that needs to happen in Black America. It must happen.
You know, I think more than anything else, if you take a look at it mathematically, that is exactly what you see. The only way you're going to solve some of these problems is, and I like the word, I like the, you know, we talk about reparations. I like the way in the video that you made a few days ago, you talked about repair something that was damaged. I want to move off of this subject now, Tamara, and I want to go into back into COVID-19. Earlier on, you had said that you were with the governor in opening the city up for, or with the state up. I want to know, what are your thoughts now that things are sort of escalating in Georgia right now?
Well, I actually looked at the numbers just a bit ago, Egberto, and yes, we have exceeded what the 100,000 cases of COVID, but we've done over 1 million tests, like 1,100,000 tests. Like we've done this astronomical number of tests. So I think we have to look at this holistically. Yes, this is a problem. Yes, we should wear masks. Yes, we should do everything it takes to be safe, but we absolutely have to learn how to live with this. We can't continue to sit back and wait for it to go away. It is not going to go away. It is not going to go away tomorrow. There is no vaccine, and we still have to continue to live. So I do believe that we are, you know, staying open and being open is, I think, what we should continue to do. I agree with him on that.
It's amazing that that would be the stance that our friend takes as well, brother Trump. You know, but no, but I understand where you're coming from, given that the industry that you're in. I take a different stance. I just wanted to know if that somehow modulated what you thought before, but at least you're talking about, you do believe people should be taking more precautions and wearing masks, etc.
Yeah, I don't negate that we have this pandemic is real. This virus is real. We have to be safe. We have to do everything we can to be safe. But the other side of that is that we have to keep going in the process. And I don't believe that any of our states should continue to shut down. I do think that people need to, you know, wearing a mask is not a hard ask. Just wear a mask. I mean, that to me is, you know, if I can still do everything I normally do, and you just want me to wear my mask and be careful with how close I get to people, that's not a hard ask.
Well, that is where you differ with the president. So that I can, that's good. That's good. Okay. Lastly, tell me about the state of the races in Georgia. Georgia is going to play a very important part in the control of the Senate, especially since we have 2 senators that are going to be coming out of Georgia in November, which I think is fantastic. What can you tell us about how Georgia is doing as far as how you're going to contribute to our progressive move going forward?
Oh yeah, I'm excited about what's happening here in Georgia. I think that you know, we have an opportunity to really, you know, make an impact with having these 2 Senate races on the ballot. There's 21 candidates in my race. We call it a jungle primary here in Georgia. I am the one in 21, hashtag the one in 21. And yeah, I am the only progressive. I talk about reparations. I talk about Medicare for all. I talk about the fight for 15. I am a true progressive on this ballot. So Kelly Loeffler is, you know, she just put her foot in her mouth again, talking about that Black Lives Matter movement shouldn't be a part of sports and bringing it into the WNBA.
She said that, huh?
She did. So a lot of us have been hammering her on social media today about those statements.
Well, I mean, I think especially in these times where Black Lives Matter has crossed 50%, which I'm pretty sure it's even higher in Georgia, I think that was the wrong move. So I foresee good things happening because everybody in America is starting to realize that. I didn't realize that. I've started putting out a whole lot of videos out there with these different events, not to play on race, but to show what the racial things that occur in this country. That's an everyday occurrence for people like you or like me, that we just smile and go on with the day. But every so often, it's good to say these are the encounters, the countless encounters we have every time we're out there. These are the kinds of encounters we have sometimes several times a day. And yeah, there are good people out there, and they may think their compadres are not doing that, but that's exactly what we live through. Tamara, give me a closer.
Yeah, so please check me out. Go to my website, look at where I stand on the issues. It's Tamara, Tamara, 4 for Georgia, spelled out, everything spelled out.com. We do a broadcast every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Myself, my co-host, and this great man here, Mr. Egberto Willis, join us every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Folks, you have to go see Tamara's show on Saturday. I have been, most of the times I try to just watch it. I'm not really interested. I am on it to give her the updates, but I enjoy watching the show because the topics that she covers and the in-depthness of the topics that they cover is great. And she has that great guy on with her as well that I like, David. So, I mean, please check out our show. Tamara, thank you so kindly for having been here on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, sir.
Anyhow, folks, that was Tamara. Next subject. First of all, Michael Rudnin, welcome aboard. AVQ, welcome aboard. Norman Reynolds. Indiana Bones, welcome aboard. Let's see who else is here. Lee Grant. Lee Grant says, Tamara is a very sensible woman. I think anytime Tamara gets conservative, Lee Grant loves her. And Dimitri OG, ¿Cómo estás, hermano mío? Estoy bien, todo perfecto aquí. Anyhow, let's go ahead and continue with a few things. Donald Trump wants all the schools to open at all costs. It doesn't matter. Your health doesn't matter. The well-being of the well-being of the teachers doesn't matter. The well-being of the school bus drivers doesn't matter. We just need it open, and if we have to coerce you to do it, we will. If we have to cut your budget, we will. There is no heart, no science, no nothing, no anything, I think is what's grammatically correct. So anyhow, let's go ahead and listen to how this was posited about opening the schools. Check this out.
The number of cases, deaths, hospitalizations still rising, but that hasn't stopped the Trump administration from insisting that schools must reopen this fall.
It would fail America's students, and it would fail taxpayers who pay high taxes for their education. Ultimately, it's not a matter of if schools should reopen, it's simply a matter of how. They must fully open, and they must be fully operational.
That declaration came hours after President Trump threatened to cut off federal funding for schools that do not open their doors, although most school budgets are funded by state and local property taxes anyway. But his administration hasn't put forward any kind of formal plan to ensure that schools reopen safely. Vice President Mike Pence had this to say about that threat when the White House Coronavirus Task Force met today, a rare appearance at the Education Department in Washington.
What you heard from the president is just a determination to provide the kind of leadership from the federal level that says that we're going to get our kids back to school because that's where they belong. And we know based upon what our best health officials tell us that we can do that in a safe and in a responsible way.
President also said he disagreed with the CDC's guidelines for reopening schools, calling them tough and expensive. Branch of his own government. A senior administration official tells NBC News the White House believes those guidelines are so restrictive that it plans to issue its own recommendations. The official also says the administration is looking at ways to tie federal funding to the pace of reopening plans as part of the next pandemic relief bill. Today's task force briefing was also notable because of the absence of Dr. Anthony Fauci. White House says the nation's top infectious disease expert was at work at the National Institutes of Health. This comes one day, however, after the president.
I think we are in a good place. I disagree with him. You know, Dr. Fauci said don't wear masks, and now he says wear them. And he said numerous things. Don't close off China. Don't ban China. And I did it anyway. I sort of didn't listen to my experts.
I'm Egberto Willis. Now, folks, think about this. What concerned them? Oh, it wouldn't be right for the people paying taxes. Well, hell, we all pay taxes whether we have kids in school or not. Oh, it wouldn't be right for the kids. What wouldn't be right for the kids if you don't open it in the proper manner to ensure their safety? What would be not right is if you don't pass the bills necessary to give the schools money so that they can implement policies to keep your kids safe. We want you open at all costs, Because you know why? Here's the deal. A lot of people don't understand why. Why is Donald Trump on this school thing? Why does he need the schools to open? Why does he need the schools to open? Why are they presenting this? It is simple. Schools are places that hold children. And if you don't have places to hold children, people don't go back to work. If people don't go back to work, the economic numbers that he needs to show America in November does not occur. So you see, somebody got to him and told him, hey guys, you have got to open the schools, because when you open the schools, people can go back to work. And when people go back to work, those numbers are going to look explosive. Even though unemployment is going to remain at 10, 11%, the increase in employment is going to look great on a percentage basis, and that's what we want to show America. So you start by opening the schools, because that is the biggest bang for your buck. The biggest bang for your buck is to get all those teachers in school, because if they're not teaching in school, think about the hundreds of thousands of teachers that will appear on the unemployment rolls if school doesn't open. Think about the hundreds of thousands of bus drivers, janitors, librarians, and all of those people. You see, that is the largest, hugest number that's going to show up on the unemployment reports. So at all cost, irrespective of people getting injured, you have to get them to work. Because if they're not working in September, those are unemployed people in November. They show up that way. So understand why the president has. I kept on listening to MSNBC and all these guys and say, come on, guys, say it. Say exactly why the president is forcing people to go back to school. Come on, people, say it. We have to understand the logic behind the president. Everything is about how those employment reports are going to look on his way into re-election. Well, what he doesn't understand is, even if the employment report looked good, Brother Trump, unless Democrats do silly things, will not get re-elected. He is a one-term president, and when he leaves the presidency, he's likely going to jail. And the reason why is the Supreme Court is likely to release his taxes. And even if it doesn't release his taxes, they're in a box. They're in a box not from the government, but there's in a box from that young lady who just wrote the book. So let's get this right, people. Let's get this right. Don't misunderstand what's going on here. Anyhow, recently, our good friend Michelle Goldberg, writer, opinion writer at New York, she had a rant on Chris Hayes. And I had to turn it into a little video because I thought it was a well-done rant. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll go into Bruce Boyce, the whistleblower on the Pharma. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. New York Times op-ed columnist Michelle Goldberg expresses a sentiment that a lot of people are feeling right now. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Well, look, you know if people you know are in the hospital. You know if people you know have died. You know if people you know are sick. You know if you are enduring the incredible burden of having your kids at home and trying to hold down a job at the same time. There's no spinning some of this stuff. I mean, I still think it's unbelievable and a sign of our extreme polarization and kind of, epistemological derangement that Trump is at 40% and not 5%. Our lives are ruined. A lot of us have watched the institutions of this country burn. We've watched the things that maybe we thought made America what, the kind of liberal democracy that those of us, that our patriotism was attached to. We've watched all of that be eroded. But now we're seeing our day-to-day lives become untenable because Donald Trump has done to this country what Donald Trump did to Trump's steaks and to his casinos and to everything else that he has ever touched.
And the two canaries in the coal mine that I always come back to is what he did to Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria, which was as absolutely omnidirectionally incompetent and cruel as what we've seen here. And people seeking asylum in our country, family separation, where they couldn't bother to put the families together in some database. I mean, those were the canaries in the coal mine.
The fact that people sort of thought that, it was just them, that Puerto Ricans, the fact that they didn't apply that lesson to their own safety, that they didn't see in that a source of, sort of an ominous warning of what would befall them if they ever faced a crisis under this presidency, is a sign of just how much his legitimacy has relied on dehumanizing large parts of the population, because otherwise people would have realized that something like this was going to happen.
Now, these are important rants. It is good to see that we have a columnist from the New York Times that recognizes this. But all that was a rant, and I think to some a necessary rant. The real question, however, is what are we going to do about it? And the thing about it is Michelle Goldberg has the platform, and I think she must use that platform to not just come on MSNBC and say this, not only write op-eds that are more on the critique side, but not strong as it should be, but go out there and also use that platform that you have to promote the message, even of the independent media, as you have that large platform to use. It is great to see that others are starting to feel that exasperation that many Americans feel. But it is important not to be just exasperated, not to be just throwing your hands up into the air stating that Donald Trump has done to America what he has done to his stakes. What we have to come back and say is, we will do unto Donald Trump that which is deserving to the person who attempted at our destruction. And that is in November. Vote him out. Bring the volume to not only vote him out, but vote progressives in, from the Congress to the Senate. And that's the way we do it. We don't need to be exasperated. We don't need to be concerned. We don't need to be crying. We need to simply act. All right, folks, thank you so kindly again for listening to that. Beforehand, I just want to tell you, please do remember that this show needs your support. Before I get into the interview with the whistleblower, I just want to give you some of those links. We are looking for subscribers on Facebook. You can subscribe on Facebook on the link that I have on the screen. But the easy link is politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. Click on that and you can become a supporter, a contributor, a subscriber on Facebook. You can also join us on Patreon. Let's see, hardware glitch going offline. Sorry to hear about that, Michael Rondon. I hope you come back. To go ahead and come on as a subscriber via our Patreon, please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. That is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. You can always support us as well on PayPal, and our PayPal again is paypal.me/politicsdoneright, paypal.me/politicsdoneright, or politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. It's always /something on our thing. And of course, you can shop at our store. We have a whole lot of products, books, all that good stuff. I'll tell you about that quickly at the end of the program. All right, let's go ahead and get into the interview with Bruce Boyce. He is a whistleblower on Big Pharma. He went through a lot. So let's go ahead and get that started, and here we go. Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. I'm here today with Bruce Boyce, a.k.a. pharmaceutical whistleblower. Bruce, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, look, you came out with a book recently that I think is going to set quite a bit on fire. I think it is so important that everybody kind of understand what happened throughout this country with pharmaceuticals, with the opioid epidemic. You're an expert in all of that because you were right there in the guts, in the belly of what occurred. All right, Bruce, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I was born and raised in the Midwest, and I went to school to Ohio State University and then worked in pharmaceuticals. And I was a rep and a manager and did real well for about 24 years.
Now, so in other words, you were into the guts of the pharmaceutical companies. You understood how it worked both externally and what about things like research and development? Were you involved there sort of to give guidance to the people in that department, what the people on the outside were looking for, hoping for, etc.?
No, I wasn't part of the research end of the pharmaceutical industry. It was mostly in the sales division. As a sales rep and hospital rep, and also as an area manager or district manager.
Okay. Now, you went through quite a bit. What inspired you to write the book at the time, at this time, relative to when you actually became that whistleblower?
Well, the reason why the book was written now is because there were actually two cases. There was a case that started in 2003, and there was a case that was in 2008. And so it took like 14 years total for all that to take place. And obviously I couldn't write a book while that was going on. And I really wrote the book because, one, I think it's important for people to understand what a whistleblower goes through, what they can expect, how difficult that can be, and also because of the opioid crisis. When I first started as a whistleblower, it wasn't that I was doing it as a whistleblower. I was afraid people were going to die. I was afraid that people were going to overdose. Those issues I just couldn't deal with on my watch. I just couldn't handle it and deal with that on my watch. So what I did is that's why I started to be an undercover informant for the feds. And it wasn't until a nurse called me and said, "Oh, you can do something about it." And I'm going, "I can?" And she goes, "Yeah, would you talk to somebody in the federal government?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I will." I just sort of threw it off. "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And that's when I got a hold of, it was first the FBI and then Office of Criminal Investigation. And that's when I started Wear Wire to investigate the company.
I am so glad that you expressed it that way, because there are a lot of people out there, a lot of reps out there. They don't care about the results of what they're doing. They simply do it because the cash flow is great. And you're telling me that as you were doing this and realized what you're being pushed to do, that is sell these drugs for the purposes that they weren't necessarily prescribed for. I think this is when you worked for the company called Cephalon. Is that correct?
Correct.
So when you were, I think you were actually pushed to sell these drugs for whatever purposes you just needed to get numbers out there. Is that right?
Exactly right. What occurs is that in the industry, you wind up having an orphan drug. An orphan drug is described as a drug that has a real small market area. And so it, like narcolepsy, has 130 patients in the country. So after you get the first year, you've saturated the market, you've taken 80% of the market, what do you do to the second year? Well, you go off label is what you do with the drug. And so what they did is that they decided to go off label on all three drugs all the time. And they were just looking for an indication that would work for them, and then expect the federal government not to catch up with them for 10 years.
Well, I want to get into a little bit of a moral issue with you a little bit further, but before, let's go through some technicalities. You decided that you could do that no more. You couldn't stand the deaths that were occurring or the illnesses that given these prescriptions would affect. So you decided finally to go to the feds.
Correct.
You wore a wire for how long?
And not quite 2 years. And that's
wow.
I worked with federal agents for almost 2 years. And the reason for that, Alberto, is that it was a situation where I was afraid that the Justice Department, they weren't going to pick up the case. And so I kept trying to get evidence about what the company was doing and how they were going about the fraud. And it took a long time to pick that information up.
So all this time that you were wearing this wire, were you going into work every single day with the wire, or?
No, I was wired for the national meeting, and then I was wired for other conversations later in the year. And then when I said I would work, it wasn't that I worked with them like all the time wearing a wire. It's, you know, documentation, getting witnesses to step forward for the government to talk to. It was arranging those kind of scenarios like for literally almost 2 years.
How many people within the company knew that you were actually whistleblowing?
It wasn't until I got fired. And it was during the bust, the FDA bust on the national meeting. And that's when they suspected me. And 6 months later, I was gone.
Oh, they did. So they did suspect you before they actually knew for sure that you were the whistleblower.
That they suspected, and they got rid of me. And then they blackballed me. So I was actually doing interviews to find another job because I thought I would just turn over documentation, wear the wire, and show the fraud and the greed that was going on, and then I can move on with my life. No, it doesn't work that way.
Well,
you fall a long way.
Let me tell you, for somebody who studies what our corporatocracy, specifically the pharmaceutical industry, does, I tell you what, it is no surprise to me. But let's go ahead and why don't you tell me a little bit of the tribulations that you went through after? Because I mean, it always seemed to turn out that the person doing good, they take a steep drop for a while. In other words, they pay a penalty for doing good, something that I thought the whistleblower law was supposed to mitigate. So tell our audience some of the tribulations that you've been through.
Sure, and you have a great question, and I think the misconception is under the False Claims Act, the whistleblower is usually protected. There's a section H that's involved that talks about loss of income. So if the whistleblower is fired, you know, it's trouble damages, which is 3 times damages a lot of times. The issue with that is that that's not till the end of the case. So how do you protect the whistleblower in the most vulnerable period of time? And one of the things that my lead counsel in the first case we've tried to do before is to try to pool other whistleblowers together to help them financially so that they're able to keep going and able to do their case. The section H that I talk about is only either after the case is dismissed or after the case is successful. That's where the you know, hands off, you can't touch this person. Well, most of the time that's not true. Most of the time the company goes after the person like they did myself, and not only just fire me, but actually call prospective employers and try to keep you from being employed in the industry.
Now, how did you document that?
I had people that heard conversations of the individual that did it and reported back to me saying, you know, when you went to this meeting, I was going to be director of training for this company. And I had packed to go to Arizona to wind up be the director and be introduced as the director of training. And in 5 minutes, there was a conversation off in another room, and they came in and they said, oh, we're having you escorted out of the building right now. Pack your things up. And I was gone.
While you were in Arizona already?
While I was in San Diego interviewing, and it was just a handshake, that it was just a handshake. I was hired already, basically. And I had packed for another week to be the director of training and go to a national sales meeting. And I was escorted out of the building. And I'm standing there, my head was spinning, and I had to call and get a cab and go to the airport.
And they told you no more. That's it.
That's it. And after that, what happens is that once the word gets out, and this is what, you know, they're saying to other people, you're not going to get a job. Your resume looks weird. Why do you have these gaps? You know, I was a high flyer with you know, making great money, being promoted, and then all of a sudden you're not able to get a job. Why can't you get a job? See, and then it's tough. I'm not I don't lie very well. It's on my face.
Well,
so it's like, it really fell apart quick.
Well, that is pretty darn. First of all, that is heroic. Okay, anybody that has the pelotas to go against the pharmaceutical company, they have my respect. And the reason why is that institution, I mean, I find it, I'm happy to speak to somebody who worked within the industry, saw what's going on and said, you know what, we need to do something to mitigate it. But some of what you're telling me here, when you explain to us about drugs that become not phantom drugs, what do you call them?
Orphan drugs.
Orphan drugs, when they become orphan drugs. What you're pretty much telling me is that the commercial side of the pharmaceutical company is just that. It has nothing to do with health. It's just using drugs as a source, as the widget from which to make profits for folks. So when you hear all these stories about the reason we're charging all these exorbitant prices for drugs, or the reason we want these types of freedoms to move these drugs, it has nothing to do with research and development. One of the reasons I first asked you if your interface with, you are a perfect interface between the doctors, the people who are using your product, and research and development, because you know, well, they are no longer needing this. This is sort of what they would like to have. That is information research R&D would want. The fact that you are not in the R&D chain says much about what do you think about that?
I'm going to give you an example of just what you're talking about. In the first case, there was a drug called Provigil. Mm-hmm. It was for narcolepsy. It was for excessive daytime sleepiness and narcolepsy. What the company did, they knew they were going to get caught for the first case for fraud. So they made a drug called Nuvigil. So they just changed some atoms around and moved some covalent bonds. And it was this similar drug, just a different name. They got a different NDA number on it. And so finally what they did is that they did a switch campaign. And so they switched patients that were off-label marketed patients for Provigil to off-label marketed patients for Nuvigil to get around the government. They did the same thing with Actic. Actic is a fentanyl, and they created a drug called Fentora. And so they did a switch campaign. They went from Actic to Fentora, and it's a Schedule II item. If you've got people that are drug naive and you put them on it, you have a risk of overdose with that drug. And they marketed it to migraine patients. So that just gives you an idea. And why? Why did they do this? Greed. They made billions of dollars out of it. That's why.
Now, explain the complicity then between the pharmaceutical companies and, let's say, the FDA and the other enforcement agencies.
I think there's, if you want to look at blame, yeah, you're looking at the pharmaceutical company or the pharmaceutical companies. There's several that really started the opioid epidemic. Okay, you've got really several that, like for example, at OxyContin, you got Purdue, you got Cephalon with Actic, you've got Johnson & Johnson with Duragesic. So those are the ones that actually started it. But the blame can go around to a lot of people. The FDA could have stopped Cephalon from promoting a fentanyl product that was supposed to be used in a hospital with patients that were cancer patients that had breakthrough pain that were dying. They were terminally ill. So fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine. It's 50 times more potent than heroin. And so you're having a drug that you're prescribing to somebody that's not used to an opioid, you're going to be in real trouble real fast with that. And the company didn't care. It was going to make a lot of money. That was the whole purpose of it.
And that is always the purpose of it. I mean, they like to say many times, the pharmaceuticals, we have to do this because we have to invest in R&D. You're telling me that they have to do this in order for you to get a commission, but not only for you to get a commission, but for the higher ups to make a killing off of not necessarily anything good for the consumer.
Well, I think one of the things I try to do with launching of the book is also to show patient advocacy. What can patients do? How can they arm themselves? Forewarned is forearmed, right? So what do you need to do when a doctor writes a script for you and you're unsure what that's for and the indication? Because you can have an on-label indication and you can have an off-label indication. Off-label indication by a physician is fine if it's appropriately done. It's the trouble is
Wait,
that
let me back up. You're telling me that it is in fact legal for a doctor to use a medicine off label, but it's illegal for you as the rep to promote that medicine for off label use. Am I understanding what you're saying?
that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So what you've got is that you've got a doctor that, let's say, has several patients in his practice or her practice that are not doing very well. And you've got a drug that comes along, and the doctor has every legal right to turn around and try to help that patient by prescribing a drug that may be off label or not indicated by the FDA. They're able to do that by law. Then they take a risk, okay?
And what is the risk? That they get sued if it's the counterindication is wrong, or?
Well, there's a lot of other things that can happen with that. You don't know, maybe you don't know what the dose is. You don't know the safety profile, the side effect profile. You know, you got a side effect complex that is, they don't know what exactly it is. It's an unsure drug. They don't have data on it that helps them understand better what the drug is. But most of the time, physicians are really good at that. They know what the drug is supposed to do. They know the side effects profile. And so they're pretty comfortable in an off-label script. That's okay. But a rep coming in and a manager coming in, telling a doctor, this is what you have to write for off-label is illegal.
I got you. You know, let me tell you something, Bruce. I think one of the importance of your book is not only about you being a whistleblower and the tribulations that you went through, but I think empowering people to, like you mentioned earlier, when they get the script from the doctor, understanding how these things can affect them, but more importantly, to sort of take the veil off a lot of the narrative that we hear from the industry every day on commercials and ads on the pharmaceutical companies, to let folks understand that it's no more than just I mean, we all know that many of these guys, many of the pharmaceutical companies, their R&D originated in colleges and universities, and then they take it and turn it into marketing. And I think one of the things that you are showing is how much of it, I mean, you don't mind them taking this over and doing more research, taking it over and doing more testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But from what you're saying, it is the overbearing arch is towards marketing. Why don't you kind of expand on that?
There's a term in pharmaceuticals called Me Too. It's a Me Too drug. And so a Me Too drug is the Provigil to Nuvigil. The Nuvigil is a Me Too. All it is just a different chemical composition, but it's really the same drug. And so all they do is that they up the price. They make the other drug a generic. They make money on the generic, and they make money on the new brand drug. And so what you get is that you get this factory, this wheels are spinning, and they're making money, but the patient doesn't benefit much from the new drug. And that's where the issue that all the money is going to R&D and we need this absorbent amount per year of 400 billion per year is what they make. So you know that some of that money goes to, like, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association, which is a lobbyist, to the lobbyist people. And why is that? Because they grease the skids with everything else. And it's like, that's when I said to you that, you know, it wasn't just the pharmaceutical company. I ran into a huge tailwind and a headwind and cross currents, that it's the FDA as well. It's the court system. It is not just one little thing that goes on here. It is a lot. It's really complicated, and I want people to pay attention. That's why the book.
And you explain all of that in detail in the book. Let me tell you, I think that it is such an important book for people to read. Now, there's a little snippet that came out in your bio that I want to go over a minute. It is interesting to see somebody who went from 6 figures to telling me you had to flip a few burgers. Tell me how you felt about that.
Oh, that's tough. I was a millionaire before.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost everything. I lost houses, cars, I lost investments, I lost everything. And I wound up the only thing I'd get as work was to flip burgers at a carnival. And it was a friend of mine that was proud of what I did and said, look, we'll help you get through this. You know, I was riding a bicycle to like Kinko's to send an email. That's the way I could contact my legal counsel at the time. And they jumped in and said, hey, look, you know, we'll flip you on the grill and you'll be able to flip burgers. We'll give you $10 an hour. And that's how I survived through the most difficult time. But it's horrible.
Now, did the company eventually have to give you a lump sum or anything for you being right?
I wound up in the first case that it was settled, and the government fined the company $425 million. And I received net after lawyers, after taxes, around $6 million. And
that's
so,
good.
And that's good. I did a podcast with somebody else, and one of the comments by the host was, that's not enough. I go, well,
I mean, you had 14 years of tribulation, right?
Right. And you don't, and look, you don't do it for the money.
Right.
And if that's why you're doing it, you're going to fail.
Right. Well, I mean, especially since you have to do it because you have the back end to do it. That is what's important. And not only that to put it bluntly, I think you would have made quite a bit more than $6 million if you had just played the game.
Oh, I was, before I started, I was making $340,000 a year.
There you go. That answers the question right there.
But you know, I just could not get past the idea of who was going to stand up for the people that were innocent, and somebody was going to overdose on these drugs, and then wind up the family members would have no idea what went wrong. The doctor wasn't going to tell, the pharmaceutical company wasn't going to tell, but they would just have an individual that was deceased, and I couldn't do that on my watch. That's why I did it.
So, well, the one good thing about that is I think folks like you have exposed that the opioid crisis didn't just start from the evil people, from people who couldn't control their drug habits or whatever. It's something that was really pushed onto them from these pharmaceutical companies to make a dollar.
Yes, I think so. I think
Bruce,
exactly.
Go ahead.
Well, I since I've been doing this, promoting the book, I also try to do patient advocacy with different agencies, because I think tackling the opioid crisis is a multi-organizational approach. And so, but I talk about that, and as I talk about that, I meet people, and my barber talked about her mom that died, and it wasn't an overdose. She was going to a pain care center. Doc was keeping her alive, and she died because her organs were destroyed. So there's a lot of collateral damage, and there's a big need to try to help people with this.
Well, look, I think your presence here will empower a lot of people who are really doing it for the right reasons where they can to do it. I sure hope we have a whole lot more in the pharmaceutical. I remember the transition from Claritin to Clarinex when Claritin came off patent. I can tell you story after story after story about that as well. What would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
My website, if people want more information, is Boise, BOISE.com.
Bruce, thank you so kindly for the interview. All the information about your book, your website will be a part of our postings. And we'll be airing you all over the place. So thank you so kindly, and thank you for what you've done. I think more people need to step up and do what you're doing, because unless that happens, we're going to continue to have this not only in the pharmaceutical industries, but in various other industries where the only thing that matters to many of these, the corporatocracy, is the dollar bill. To hell with anything else, to hell with humanity. Thank you so kindly, Bruce, for being with us.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me go ahead and go through real quickly. Welcome aboard, Kathy Courtney. Kathy Courtney, the name of the book is Cold Comfort. I'll have the link to it in the blog for the show. Let's see what else we have here. Yes, Michael Rudnin, I will go ahead and post this video or this interview separated from the program itself as well in its own blog. So look for that on the politicsdoneright.com website instead of not on the egbertowillies.com website. Let's see, Michael Rudnin tagging Urgor. Okay, I think that is sort of personal. Kathy Courtney, let's see, who else do I need to welcome aboard? Welcome aboard. Look, guys, I appreciate all of you that are spending this time with me. Look, we have a lot of work to do, but I want everybody's spirit to be lifted up. I want everybody to understand there are a lot of people out there doing good things. Yes, we are under the oppression of Donald Trump and his cabal. But you know what? We are Americans, and you know what we do? We move forward. So don't sit back down there and twiddle your fingers and think, oh, we can't do this. Oh, we can't do this. It's not about, oh, we can't do this. This is done. This is going to be done. I have faith that we are going to, at the end of this year, be on the progressive path back to rebuild America, not to what it was before, but what progressivism can make it to be for everybody. No more 1%ers in control. We are going to be coming back. Folks, my name is Egberto Willies, but before I go, I need to ask you again. Folks, please do remember to visit our site and please support us. Please go on our Facebook page. Here's a link to support us on Facebook. It is facebook.com. Actually, it's politicsdoneright.com/Facebook. To support us at Patreon, please go to, and here is the link, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. To visit or to support us on PayPal, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. I have other links that I'm putting in the screen because I haven't updated all of my links yet. And by the way, you can visit our store at store.politicsdoneright.com, where you can actually get our cup. Politicsdoneright.com. I support independent media. We even have it with the squad. And of course, you can get our books. Here is, oops, green screen. What's wrong with you, green screen? Here we go. We have, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. You can get at our store, as well as, you know, I had my weight problems, and I think I've solved them. Lose weight and be fit now. I have it as the way I did it, but you will do it your way, and this book will kind of tell you how to do it your way. Again, please visit store.politicsdoneright.com. Please remember again to support us at politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. I have all those links in there. We do need your support. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.